Welcome to the Predictive Pulse Podcast. I'm Carlos Casas, CEO and Principal Analyst of Predictive Data Lab. We are your data science and media partner, and our team of experts are dedicated to providing strategic insights for data, research, and analysis. Our podcast explores the world of data and marketing analytics, helping you stay ahead of the curve. Join us on this journey to tap into tomorrow's insights today. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes as we embark on this data-driven adventure together. In this episode of the Predictive Pulse podcast, we delve into the critical topic of why paid media campaigns often fall short in delivering the desired ROI. Joining me for this insightful discussion are two industry experts, Moses Munoz, co-founder and CEO of ATD Partners, and Alyssa Bergman, partner and lead digital strategist at ATD Partners. And they will be uncovering the secrets to achieving successful and ROI-driven paid media campaigns. This episode is a must-listen for anyone looking to maximize the impact of their marketing efforts. Stay tuned to the Predictive Pulse podcast for this invaluable discussion, and don't miss out on this expert advice. Thank you so much for joining us, Moses and Alyssa. Yeah. We're very happy and excited to have you here. So as we mentioned, we're really looking to understand how to build better marketing campaigns that really help us drive ROI. So with that in mind, could you, Moses and Alyssa, give us a little bit of background as to what ATD Partners is and how you guys approach media campaigns?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here. I know we work really closely together. But I'm Moses Munoz from ATD Partners. ATD stands for Agency Trading Desk. So, that's a term very specific to programmatic, which we started off in that niche many years ago. And as time grew, we really expanded into a digital marketing agency. So what does that mean? We simply put, partner with agencies and brands to become an extension of their media team.
Right. Got it. Awesome. Very cool. So how would you guys go on or ensure essentially that when you're working with a media campaign, that ultimately it achieves the desired ROI?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll take this one. So it really starts with communication with your partner, your client, to understand their goals and what they're trying to accomplish, right? So whether the ROI that can be multiple different things, right? If there's a value on email subscriptions, on direct sales, on other initiatives, that you're all on the same page there, to make sure that what you're working towards is the same goal, right? And I think something we talk about is there's a very, elementary acronym where it's SMART, right? So you make your goals strategic, you make them
measurable.
What's that?
Measurable.
Strategic, measurable, timely, so time bound, make sure that there's a deadline on these, realistic. Oh no, and the A is escaping me.
I know, it's like actionable.
Yeah, I think it's actionable, but those are the main other points there, right? So all of those things to make sure the goals are realistic. If we say something along the lines of, we're working with a new e-commerce brand and they're saying, we want to increase our sales 400% in the next 3 days, right? That's not realistic. Mm-hmm. So making sure we're all on the same page, setting goals forward, and making sure we have a good team to work with clients and help manage expectations and make sure that those are realistic.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's also okay to just change them sometimes. I think a lot of clients think that, okay, this is our goal, we cannot change it. But this is an industry where it's constantly changing. So it's okay to step back and be like, okay, we tried this isn't really working. Maybe it's not actually what we should be focusing on. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you guys encountered the, scenario where a brand or an agency or whomever does not have real KPIs, right? For example, in an instance where, you ask the question, well, what is the goal here? Initially, it's always increase sales, right? We want to increase sales. Everyone wants to do that. But beyond that, they're not really sure what else to do, right?
Yeah.
Or how to even achieve that. So how would you approach having a conversation, trying to really get deeper into those points?
Yeah, that's a good question because we work with several clients who we've come to who have very broad goals, that are, let's increase sales. And then even more specifically, working with travel and tourism, where they say, we want more visitors. It's, well, one, how are we really tracking that? Right. So helping them track something, create a mechanism in order to track ROI is very important. We see that a lot. If it's not already being measured, we need to start that right away because we need to know how we're performing against ourselves or previous sales. And, we've done it a few times, quite a bit, where it goes two ways, where it's very general and we need to help them create a way and to track ROI. So whether that's a different what's the word I'm looking for? Some sort of formula that does time on site, online engagements, growth in user follower, all of these things that lead to somebody who might visit a city or an attraction, talking about travel specifically. Then it's also, we have products people who sell products who never really tracked things before, and saying, okay, if I get an email subscriber, what does that lifetime value of that customer look like over time? Do they keep coming back, et cetera? So Alyssa is a big part of that.
I think sometimes with clients, it's about educating them at times when they do have really broad goals. Maybe it starts with some education of, okay, maybe they don't really know who their audience is, which is where you guys come in and help a lot with PDL. So I think educating is also a huge component when they have, or when they think that they know what their goals are, they're super broad. So just educating them.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you brought a great point, Alyssa, in terms of educating a client in terms of, what are their goals? Who is their audience? What are we trying to achieve here when it comes to paid media efforts? So when looking at that particular point of education, many times we look at research as part of that education process. So do you have any examples of any negative consequences that could be avoided by spending some time and budget on research prior to an actual paid media campaign?
Oh, yes. It's definitely times where I've gotten in trouble where I have not done my research. I started doing some more international plans, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, TikTok's new. I'm going to include it on my plan. Like, why would I not? It's a new hot thing. Turns out they weren't doing advertising yet in that country for TikTok. So I'm like, oh, what a great idea, only for me to get in the platform and it's not even there. So then I have to go back to the client and be like, sorry. No. Whereas if I would have just done my research and gone into the platform. So I think it kind of took me a moment to be like, okay, international is very different. Some of these countries I've never been to, so I'm not as up to date with what all their policies are. So yeah, I've had to learn the hard way for some of those. Yeah. So
what about you, Moses? Any specific thoughts on negative consequences?
Negative consequences of not doing research?
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I was understanding that correctly. I mean, I think you then get into the philosophy, or if you don't do research, you're going to get in trouble because you get into this spray and pray mentality of, let's just put it out there and somebody will buy it, right? When if you're working with a customer who's been there at the whatever the company is for a long time, they know their good customer base. So that's like a good first step of doing some research. Who do you think your customer is? And then doing research after actual research, building audience segments and market research to go a little bit further, really helps fine tune the media strategies, right? So, I would say as a whole, I would like to, nothing's coming to mind where we've gotten in trouble or I've gotten in trouble for not doing research, because I think it's such an important thing to put forward before any campaign, to understand, if I'm selling pizza cutters and for some reason they don't ship to the Austin area, why would I advertise
Right.
there? So simple thing. I mean, that's a overly simplistic view, but
Right.
things like that.
Yeah. I think it's we often just assume that clients have done the research, or that clients know who their target is, or who is not their target, right? But we oftentimes what we see is that research hasn't really been conducted. It's a lot of times just part of kind of a innate internal belief system that, oh, this is who we have, but we don't really know, right? And so what we've seen on our end is many times you'll have someone who spends a large amount of money advertising to people that are just not their customers, and therefore they just end up wasting funds, or they've done that in the past, right? And therefore they're not as effective. So,
and that's one of my favorite things about this kind of research studies is that even myself, without having too much knowledge about something specific, it would be, oh, I'm going to assume the primary customers are X, Y, and Z, and then I love seeing data provided over, oh my gosh, there's actually a completely different segment. And then when you think about it, it makes maybe more sense and to target those demographics.
Yeah. Awesome. So could you guys give us a little bit better understanding, especially for listeners that might not really understand what programmatic means, right? You guys have been in this world for many, many years. So it's nature for you both to just know it. But if you had to kind of explain it to someone who's looking to do programmatic, maybe hasn't done it in the past, how would you go about explaining what it is and the power of it?
Do you want to take this one? I feel like you've been doing some college 101 talks recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simple definition is just buying and selling of digital media. And examples are something as simple as, targeting you on your cell phone, which is device ID, or, targeting on Hulu. So many people have I have like 1 million subscriptions, Spotify, everything. So it's just encompassing everything. OTT, which would encompass the Hulu. I mean, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I think to expand on that a little bit, it's, buying digital media via technology. And the other piece of that is that there's an auction system, right? So I guess taking it back several years is that what we don't do is, we're an agency trading desk, but we don't buy and resell media necessarily. There used to be a whole industry of what's called arbitrage, right? I'm going to buy a TripAdvisor spot for $5. I'm going to resell it for 10. What we actually do is we connect to these technology sources, and we have our audience defined, our geos, and through the demand side platforms, supply side platforms, that we say, go find our right audiences who we think is going to convert the best, and we have our bids, and we have what I would say are proprietary techniques, so we can't really get too much into that, of how we buy media and how we structure our pricing floors and how we buy across different mobile devices, or how we would buy against OTT placements to make sure we're reaching all of our target audiences on different platforms at different times.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Moses and Alyssa. So, there's over 300 million residents in the United States. How effective is programmatic in reaching large audiences?
I mean, you have to utilize different platforms, right? Someone who might be on Facebook might not be on TikTok, for example. That's also kind of why we have an omni-channel. We include different types of media to be able to, for example, maybe I am part of someone's target audience, but I don't have Peacock. It's the one that I don't have, but maybe they're targeting on that. How are they going to reach me? They have to figure that out, and they have to target me through the other channels that I'm a part of. So,
yeah. So, kind of taking it back to ROI, why would you explain to someone that, using the power of this bid system and auction style buying can be effective for achieving their ROI?
Yeah, I think because you can get so specific to where if you were to see the data segments we have, you always hear about how advertising's, creepy, people connect data and all of this stuff. But you could go into the system and say, I want to target left-handed people who chew Wrigley Spearmint bubblegum, right? And that's the variety of different data providers. And that's bittersweet because we can define our audience that much, right? And we can spend a ton of time focusing on this small segment of users. And then, outside of that, we can get too focused, right? What's the saying? You're staring at the trees and you can't see the forest type thing. So it's a fine way of, making sure we're using all the different platforms to reach the audience in several different ways with different messaging in each one, as well as making sure we're not hyperly. I could spend $1 million targeting that one audience, but it has to be a fine line and strategic approach to make sure we're still trying to obtain the ROI and reach the goals that were originally set, like we were originally talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, so balanced approach
Yes.
more than anything. So, do you have any successful stories of clients that have been using, stronger segmentation of audiences, right? So, not maybe to the level of, a left-hand spearmint chewer, but someone that, is going deeper than just general audience, right? And therefore, they have achieved better ROI or better campaigns.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do it all the time of where, I don't have any children, so maybe my search tactics are a little different for someone that is a full family, which is kind of why we do that. We have to have different messaging. You kind of brought up that people think advertising's creepy sometimes because we know everything about you. But I personally don't want to get a message that doesn't resonate with me because then I'm not going to be interested in it. So I think it's really important to actually get that messaging right and make sure that you're targeting appropriately, which is I'm probably part of a different segment compared to what Moses is. But maybe they're wanting to have a full encompass of, okay, we are wanting him to buy this sort of product, but we also have this product. So we want to make sure we have that correct segmentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we have really good relationships with all of our partners. So going beyond the general data segments that we can utilize, we have the ability to tap into CRM data to create lookalike audiences, to segment things out and test different audiences there, even using, where do these current customers index high for in certain zip codes and take that strategy and approach as well. So just an example of a way we've seen increased ROI from utilizing different segmentation techniques.
Yeah. Is there any specific story that you can think of that you would say this is a great example of someone that's done this and benefited from it?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few furniture clients that really benefit from it, I think, in taking both the approach of, we have several different audiences, but then also using their current data to allocate media dollars appropriately, not only to those audiences, but areas that just generally index high for their store. And it's really interesting to see sales increase. I'm specifically thinking about one, I think it's a very high-end furniture. Their average sell ticket's about $50,000 to $100,000 per person. So they're not, targeting college students who are just moving into UT campus. It's very specific high-income areas of Austin. And taking that strategy, we saw really, really good success for their increase. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but we can add in a addendum at the end or something.
They're good.
Yeah. I remember this is one that we did with you guys actually a while back, where we had an instance where we were experiencing really high summers really high heat in the summer, and so we had to develop audiences that basically had an indication that they spent time outdoors, even in high heat, and therefore target people in that way. So, and we saw success coming in from those particular actions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to something that, Alyssa said, that you can't be scared to pivot because you don't know
Right.
things how, that audience doesn't want to go outside during the summertime when it's 100 degrees, but
Right.
but now we had to find somebody who's still willing to
Right.
travel and do things outside to make the campaign successful.
Yeah,
Right.
the Texas summers are not for the weak.
Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is fascinating, right? I mean, the goal here is to be able to, as you mentioned, pivot. Also, the ability to really understand the customer or the individual we're trying to influence, right? Their behavior, going deeper than that demographic and psychographic nature, and then using programmatic to have a balanced approach of targeting, where it's just not just one particular audience, but a multi-layered approach, right? So this is great. So how would you guys, I know you work a lot with search engine marketing. You're having to develop creative. You don't always do really creative, right? But when it comes to developing the right message to the right audience, how do you create ad copy that resonates with each audience? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I think sometimes utilizing like the dynamic localization of it, people want to feel like they're special. So if you're like, say for the furniture client, if they have multiple locations throughout the state, hey, come visit the Austin location. Hey, come visit the Houston location. It's something as simple as that. And Google does that. I know Nextdoor, some other partners do that. So it's not just Google that utilizes it, but it just makes the audience feel a little bit more special, that they're tailored to, that, oh, they actually know that I live down the road. This is convenient and helpful. I think that's one way.
If we could use your first name, we would. We'd say, hey, Carlos,
Yeah.
come down the street and check it out. But
I actually, I read this story about this guy that was trying to get a job, and he targeted all of the marketing directors of each company that he wanted to be hired by through Facebook. He somehow obtained like their device ID and just literally, hey, here's my resume. Use their name. I was like, that's kind of genius, but terrifying. I would click on it if someone was like, hey, Alyssa.
Yeah.
this is kind of off topic, but about 15 years ago, when I was much younger, obviously, I tried a tactic of spamming a person's website with a UTM code so they'd see my name. And because I was also applying to a job for this company. So I was like, oh, maybe the analytics person will see my name and like, oh, that's clever. I'm going to give this guy an interview. Gladly, I didn't get the job. So, yeah.
They're like, block this guy.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
terrifying.
Don't let them in the building.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it starts with audience segmentation, knowing who we're targeting. We have a really good team who also works cross-functionally on SEO. So their bread and butter is also content writing, making sure they're using the right tone of voice as well to incorporate an ad copy as well.
Yeah, I think it also kind of goes back to research of keeping up with people's shopping habits or just what they're doing, making sure that that copy is staying relevant. I mentioned it's constantly changing. I know like TikTok was once going to be removed forever, banned in the US, and then now Texas banned it only on government phones, and just kind of making sure that you're staying relevant with what's happening. You don't want to come off as, especially in today's world, insensitive, and just like making sure that you're constantly researching and staying on top of your customers' habits.
Yeah. So you guys kind of highlighted the fact that, personalizing the ad as much as possible, right? If you said, if we could use your name, we would, and maybe we actually can, but we choose not to, right? So, going with that approach of personalizing and what Alyssa just mentioned, which is, really staying on top of things and pivoting as necessary with trends. How do you balance that with, having a limited maybe production budget, right? So you can't have the ability to go out and mass produce content regularly. What would you guys recommend to a client that scenario?
Use us. I mean, we have a new offering for while we don't do any creative production or concepting, we have a lot of different out of the box packaging that allows you to use current assets and create dynamic ads, right? So they can be more customizable to where we create an ad unit for you to be, very specific towards I live in the Highland neighborhood of Austin, Texas type situation. Or they could be more dynamic in terms of feeding images off of a CSV XML feed to even retarget people to say, I've recently looked at this product.
Right.
These people also consider the secondary product. Maybe it's something you'd be interested in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of like what Amazon is essentially doing in their
Exactly.
ecosystem. Yeah.
I think also, we were talking right before this about AI.
Right.
It's essentially free for people to use and utilize, and it's actually pretty cool. So I think you can utilize that if you're low on assets and just test it out.
Yeah.
Something like simple as that.
So leveraging technology essentially, and that requires to do your research and stay on top of what's trending and what's new. But leveraging technology to use your assets that you do have in a way that can personalize the content more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. So one of the things that we see often is multi-generations in a household, right? And what we mean by that is not necessarily grandparents. But now you have parents who might be Gen X. Then you have children that are Gen Z, or even younger children that are Generation Alpha. So when it comes to targeting a household that has multi-generations, what do you recommend from a programmatic basis when you're trying to reach them, that particular audience, and not maybe the children, not the grandpa or the grandma? How would you go about that using programmatic?
Yeah, I think a lot of our DSPs are, we use them for a reason. They have a lot of great targeting tools, and some of the partners we utilize, we can push segments through to do pretty much whatever we want, which is really, really nice for us. Moses, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think there's, I'm trying to think of the specific names, but we'll just say there's different targeting techniques where you can do household level, where it's all devices seen in this household, or we could do it, to a device ID level where we are confident that this person is a 22-year-old who works in ad tech, and it's identifying those devices versus, grandma's device who doesn't want to see the same things that a 22-year-old is going to see.
Right.
So the ability to decipher between the two is important, and we have a lot of really good technology partners who are really good at that.
Yeah.
And so we're leaning on them heavily to help us identify those users.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit deeper into like what are some of those things, right? Because you mentioned, Alyssa, you can pretty much do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a world where we literally do that every day. So for us, it's normal. But for those that may be listening, they might not have any idea as to how much there is in terms of the level of targeting. Is there maybe some not so creepy examples that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start with like some of my favorite things is track. If you're thinking about the journey of a consumer throughout the day, Alyssa said something to the effect like we all want to, kind of think we're all special, but I always say the example that I'm not. I take the same route to work every day. I probably go to the same. Everyone.
I
go to the exact same coffee shop every day, right? I take this path. I might deviate every now and then, right? But and so for me, the first thing I typically do, we are creatures of habit. I check. Yahoo Finance, or I check, other fantasy football, whatever it might be, if that's the season. And then, I can target myself on that app on my phone, right? If I am streaming music I'm one of the few people who maybe use Amazon Music at the house. And so I can send or podcasts, right, that we listen to. How can I get the same ad there? And this is also, overkill. I'll explain why I'm saying that in a second, but then I go to the same gas station. How can I reach myself on the gas station topper? Digital billboard on the way to work. When I'm taking a break at work, scrolling whatever social media it is, serving myself or that person ad that time, right? And then going back home, relaxing, watching TV, getting the final ad there. That's a real example that we could do that.
Yeah.
The reason I said that's overkill is I could probably get a little ad burnout of seeing the same brand 15 times in a day. So you want to make sure you space that out where maybe it's once in the morning, a frequency cap of between these hours on Mondays. Yeah. And then, I only want to show myself 2 TV ads throughout the week.
Right.
And finding that balance, because we can reach so many people on so many devices, you don't want to have a negative connotation towards your brand's now spamming people as well.
Right.
Yeah. I think a cool example is, I think a lot of people think digital out of home, it's obviously not clickable. You're just driving by, you see it, but we're able to retarget those customers that drive by on their cell phone. So, you're driving to work, you take the same route, maybe you see the same ad, but then, it's not really fully resonating with you, but you are seeing it. You're almost seeing it, but not taking action. And so we can later retarget them, which is kind of cool.
Right.
So just something like that. It's just...
Yeah, and that's important too, because, we'll have to add this to our list of things to add to the end. But there's a stat out there, I'll have to figure out who it's from, where it's pretty common, where it's a brand, you have to interact with a brand 100 times before it's memorable or considerable, right? And so not doing that in a day is very important, but doing it over time as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. Because, we have so many options today, and obviously with verifying the data is good, and verifying the data partner and the technology that you're using is strong. But as Alyssa mentioned, you have the ability to really hone in on the right audience you want. And as you mentioned, Moses, even taking time into account, right? The really the life cycle of the customer as they're going about their day is really cool. So really the goal here would be to understand the customer as much as possible, or the person you're trying to influence, right? It might not be a customer yet. Really understand them as well as possible, all the habits that they have as a persona, or an audience segment that you develop, and ultimately leverage those insights into your programmatic campaign.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice. So we've talked a little bit about KPIs and really being able to hone in on that. So Alyssa brought out something that I think is really important is the constant research or the monitoring, or the ability to pivot. So how would you approach the importance of monitoring and optimizing your campaigns?
Man, I think it's crucial. You lead the team and do this more on a regular basis. So
I brought up how TikTok got banned in Texas on government phones, and at the time that completely ruined our media plan. If I wasn't, paying attention and optimizing, and again, also KPIs change. So me making different optimizations, I need to make sure that I'm making sure my team is being accountable and we're all working towards the same goal. Mm-hmm. I think that's why KPIs are so important. It kind of keeps everyone accountable. We're all working towards the same thing at the end of the day. But yeah.
Yeah, it's important to monitor this stuff for general performance to know when you need to pivot. When we put a plan in place, we do like to think this is the right plan. But there are situations like we talked about where you do need to pivot, right?
Right.
And being able to whether something gets blocked or, just there are things out of your control you need to change. Being able to monitor performance is key. For us, our philosophy is we're, ad tech and media agnostic. So that means we use multiple different platforms. And to have a centralized place to monitor all of this is key. So we don't have to log into 15 or 20 platforms. That would take half a day in itself. And you can then see sometimes things break. It's not necessarily the operator's fault. Sometimes it's the platform. You need to make that aware to clients when something goes off of lines. Do we want to shift those funds somewhere else?
Yeah.
Do we want to just keep it paused and hopefully it goes back live? So there's a ton of examples of why it's important to
Yeah.
to be able to monitor and optimize things.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I was just going to say different audience segments respond differently. So we might think something's going to be working really well. And okay, this audience is just not wanting anything to do with clicking on our ads. So just making sure we're staying on top of it, because you don't want the campaign to end and then it's like, well, we didn't really check, but performance sucks. You know, we could have caught that from the beginning and done something about it.
Yeah. And I think this is where most companies or clients fail is to do that, right? They're used to maybe an approach where, you know, what we call post-mortem, where the campaign concluded and then we analyze it, when in reality you want to do it right off the gate. And it goes back into what we were discussing about, you know, ROI and ensuring that you're achieving those KPIs. No, this is great. So in regards to optimization, Alyssa, you know, what is there insights in that you can gain from analyzing your campaign so early and staying on top of it that can help you to provide better optimizations? Yeah,
I mean, it depends on the goal. Like I mentioned, we use our DSPs for a reason. There's buttons we can click that, hey, maybe we want to focus on our reach and on our impressions.
Yeah.
And we can just make that change right then and there. Or, hey, maybe we just really want to focus on clicks and we can utilize that. A lot of them have really cool audience like reporting tools that we can utilize and really go more in depth about, okay, out of, you know, all of these segments we push through, you know, is it maybe the 18 to 24-year-olds that are really killing it? So maybe we'll, you know, heavy up on that to kind of further increase our goal to just overall heavy up on it.
Right. So Moses described, you know, the ability to kind of centralize all of this data, because you've got, you know, 15 different platforms. And that's just in programmatic, right? You still might have traditional media that is also being utilized. So having the ability to analyze it in a cohesive place is important.
Yes.
So is there technology that you guys are leveraging when it comes to the creative messaging, right? Because I think that's when, you know, our team specifically is looking at impression delivery, zip codes, reach, frequency, clicks, traffic to the site, all these things. But sometimes we don't look at necessarily the creative, right? Mm-hmm. What is the creative and the impact of creative? Is there any specific technologies that you guys are utilizing for that?
No, there's a few. I would say we start with, especially like a lot of the social platforms have baked in, give us 5 options, we will help you optimize it to say this works, take one out, put in another one, right? So those are kind of baked in models or that help us optimize those. You know, as far as other technologies we do is just standard A/B testing. You know, there are times when a single word, especially in search, like Alyssa was talking about, can increase conversion rate. And so identifying those within the platform and using, you know, different creative tools to help us figure out what those are is helpful, so we don't have to do guesswork, take the guesswork out of things.
Yeah. I love A/B testing.
Yeah.
Makes my life easier in the long run. But yeah, like Moses said, a lot of the social platforms, we also have reps for almost every single platform we utilize. So, you know, most of our clients give us the creatives and we don't have a ton of say in it. But our rep will be like, hey, we're really seeing great performance across these other 3 accounts that are very similar to yours. I would suggest utilizing, you know, X, Y, and Z. They're always coming out with new, you know, beta versions of, you know, now there's carousels in TikTok that you can start utilizing, that you can pull from as simple as the website. Even if the client's like, I have no more creatives for you, you can just, you know, pull it from the website automatically. So it's kind of nice to utilize.
So how would you guys approach the communication with the agency or the partner where, you know, you want to give them insights or information, not so much information, but insights really on the efficiency of or improving their creative? How would you go about that?
Yeah, I think having hard statistics is the easiest way. I think, time and time again, we can be like, hey, we really would love to test this out. I really think it's going to help. And they'll just be like, okay, sounds good. We'll think about it. If you come to them with, hey, this is proven to increase your sales.
Right.
We need to try it. I think it will give them more of an incentive to utilize it.
Right.
Rather than just being like, hey, I think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
It might be a good idea, but if there's no hard evidence on it, it's kind of hard for sometimes them to put more money and energy into making something new.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think sometimes we talked about how KPIs and the process of developing KPIs is really important, right? And many times the people that are in the room, so to speak, when we're developing KPIs is, the marketing manager, the media, maybe the CEO, but the person that often is missing from that is the creative, right?
Yeah.
The creative is sometimes just not part of those discussions. So, so I think it's important that they're part of that just as much, right?
That's a great point.
and that we have a plan of how are we going to, if we need to optimize creative, how are we going to approach that, and what maybe technologies we can leverage to help facilitate that, knowing you have limited funds, knowing you have limited production, limited time, right? So I think that's a key element where a lot of agencies or just marketers kind of miss the mark is not having everyone in the room, and creative is it's an extremely important part of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've never really thought about that. That's definitely crucial. Maybe we should make sure that everyone's a part of the conversation.
No, I think sometimes our hands are tied. Alyssa hit it on the nose of saying, here are the results, here's why, and here's the hypothesis or theory we want to move forward with. But at the end of the day, limited time, limited resources.
Right.
Who knows if the marketing director or account executive is then relaying that on top of the other 400 things they have to relay to creative teams or their managers or whoever it might be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's fascinating how as time has progressed in technology, marketing in general has become much more multidisciplinary, right? We have just you guys alone have multiple layers of discipline, right? Whether it's by platform or by DSP, et cetera. So, is there any specific recommendations? You guys, we both work very closely together with our data science team and programmatic buying team. Is there any specific recommendations on how best to work together when it comes to multiple disciplines?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of our clients, establishing like the tracking mechanisms, making sure that it's being tracked properly, and just making sure that that's a part of their KPI. A lot of times you'll send us that, we'll place it, you guys make sure it's firing, blah, 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 back and forth, making sure, just working together to make sure by the time this campaign ends, we're actually tracking something rather than, oh, it actually wasn't working and we didn't work together. I could have told you that,
Yeah.
I think that's one example among many.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the communication, educating each person to some level on different areas of expertise. Like, I don't think the data engineer necessarily needs to know and how to upload a creative into this system, but they should probably have a general sense of capabilities, metrics being able to be pulled from these, right? Different things. Maybe it's, why doesn't this line have any clicks? No clicks. Well, it's because it's OTT. You know? Stuff like that might be helpful. Just the general training and understanding of different tactics at different levels. Yeah.
And I think that's part, if I'm listening correctly, Moses, I think that's part where, as agency owners, you have to really help your employees and your people to learn multiple disciplines, even though if that's not their forte, right? That's not their focus. They need to know at least the foundation of others.
Yeah, and I think that's the approach we like to take of, I don't know if you've heard the example of like a T marketer, right? So you go in a horizontal line here where it's, let's say, meta ads, digital out of home, SEM, all of these different things. And you can think of it as let's go reverse of a T and go up like a sound bar, right? So you're more specialized in SEM, so your knowledge now goes to an 8. But we do like to train everybody else to
Right.
specialize
Yeah.
in these other areas to a certain level. That way, when we put a team together, somebody might be, the more experienced in SEM, but they also have a team member over here who is more specialized in social strategy, and they can work
Right.
together and still understand how to work together and not have everything so siloed. There's so many agencies that, you'd be shocked at how the social team doesn't necessarily talk to the
Right.
digital programmatic team, or
Right.
digital out of home is its own separate kind of weird thing. Is it traditional? Is
Right.
it more
Yeah.
digital media? So trying to break down those walls to have more open communication and strategy of how these things
Right.
work together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's you nailed it, right? In terms of breaking down those walls. And unfortunately, whenever a new segment or a new discipline becomes part of the trade, walls are kind of placed automatically without necessarily trying to. It just happens. So you have to do a systematic approach of breaking down those walls and really helping everyone come together.
Yeah, and I think just general advice for people, I would say, is don't take anything personally. I think
Right.
once somebody is put into this bucket of I'm on the social team, but then they're getting advice or getting
Right.
collaboration, people can see it as trying to take what I'm personally doing
Right.
away versus trying to grow things as a whole.
Yeah.
And so, just collaborating will make everything
Yeah.
run smoother, better ROI.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because part of that balance between, like Alyssa brought out, making sure who does what, right? So you have to have a certain level of ownership within your own discipline, but you also have to have some level of expertise across other disciplines, and then having the ability to take advice and not be hurt if
Yeah.
someone highlights something that maybe you were doing wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I remember just the other week I was sitting on a call with your team, and I was asking questions. It might have seemed like I was, poking at stuff, but it really was ultimately to lead. Oh, I didn't know you had to work in that manner.
Right.
Let me take that back to the team,
Right.
and say, don't set up a campaign. It's as simple as naming something differently, right?
Right.
This way to make it easier for
Right.
analytics and PDL to
Right.
flow in. So just even that simple comment or understanding will make us more efficient when working together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy what communication
Yeah.
will do.
Yeah.
How few people do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Maintaining, as someone once told me, we're in the communications business, but we don't communicate. And so,
yeah.
yeah, making sure that everyone is aware of the goals, making sure everyone is aware of how we're going to track them, and then being able to communicate, how we're doing against that is vital. So as we, I think our teams are pretty advanced in terms of, our capability and obviously what we bring to the table in terms of analysis, data science, even AI. So as we go into, the future of marketing, right? What do you guys foresee as potential new disciplines that will develop over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone keeps talking about AI. I think I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I think it's constantly changing, so it's hard to kind of keep up with right now. I think, it was first ChatGPT, and I think there's now 100 other different ones that are geared towards something very particular.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I think something in that sector, it's nerve-wracking to see what it's going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's for sure. I think I'm going to say AI engineers, but in the sense of, the difference between like general language models and large language, right? We're going to need almost product managers to do that specifically for our AI to teach it to create frameworks, right? To
Right.
ask it the right questions.
Correct.
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
who are going to be specialized in that area to how to best utilize that as a product as a whole to integrate it to our industry
Yeah.
for different ones too, right? For creative, for strategy, for analytics.
Right.
And something I don't know if this is answering your question exactly, but we were just talking about this as, you know, the Apple glasses come out and stuff
Right.
like that, staying ahead of this is more of what different new advertising might come out in the future is what is that going to look like when we bring technology to our household,
Right.
and
Yeah.
what type of ads are we
Yeah.
going to be able to place across these new apps that are more
Right.
native in your home? That's going to be a different conversation for creative. It's going to be a different
Right.
conversation for strategy.
Right.
All of these different things. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting in the next year or so to see how that shapes out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You know, I think it's fascinating. Technology has obviously enabled, you know, the collection of mass data. So data engineers have been instrumental now in marketing, right? But then as you were mentioning, Moses, going into the ability of having that framework of understanding on how to bring that information down to your specifics, right, is key. And I think you're absolutely right. That's going to be a massive explosion of opportunity there. You know, social media is now a thing where everyone almost in the entire world is connected in some form or fashion to a social media platform. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. So what do you, you know, you mentioned the Apple glasses as part of maybe what's going to change next, right? But so what else, what other catalysts do you think could be out there that could potentially change something like social media, change traditional media?
This is going to be more of like I've always thought about this, a Minority Report type situation where customization, if you allow it to be, is going to be, you know, you walk into a Nordstrom and it doesn't even have to be your face. That could be used as one mechanism, right? It recognizes you. It sees that you bought all of these different products.
Right.
And then it tells you, here's a catalog. Here's the aisle you should go look at. Right. You could do the reverse of, you now bring that into your household and have more of you're wearing the Apple Glass instead of putting a furniture piece with your phone in your living room.
Right.
It now dresses you into these different garments that it thinks you might like.
Right.
Or it could be the other way of it scans what you're wearing when you walk into the store, and then it does that.
Yeah.
And so creating, what does that look like for paid media in the future, right? Is it, if you go into a sports stadium, can you then send them a coupon to their phone of saying, come to the hot dog stand or the beer stand first type thing? So same thing for grocery stores, right?
Yeah.
And so there's there's some things like that in grocery stores that you could get towards, but it'd be really interesting as processing power, computing power, and what we allow technology to do for us will definitely influence how we'll be able to advertise to people.
Right.
Yeah. So
I definitely want that dressing. Like, to not go into the dressing room and try on.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's fascinating that you kind of what you mentioned is wearable technology, right? Part of that wearable technology being confluencing with media, and then personalization, right? Making sure that you as an individual are kind of well known with the brand or have some form of relationship with the marketer or the marketing brand. I think it's kind of what you were describing in essence. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So as we go into deeper and deeper with technology and AI, do you guys see any issues with, deepfakes and things of that nature where brands have to be aware of potentially negative reputation developed by something like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's easy to just blame AI in a computer, but people want a person or brand to blame. So I think it's definitely going to be a struggle for a lot of brands to figure that out.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's already happening. I mean, you brought up that what was the app that you
I can't remember the name of
all
it,
the
but I
CEOs?
didn't know if that was a real person talking to me or if they're just
It's like,
maybe doing a deep fake.
skeptical.
Who knows?
It's still all kind of
Yeah.
new. So
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's always been a fine line in advertising between like persuasion and manipulation. And so
Right.
this now accelerates that to where I trust somebody in an industry and then they are now manipulated to maybe not actually say that. It's this whole
Yeah.
acceleration of not fake news, but now it's just can be fake everything. So,
Right.
that might be a new person in the industry who would be, like an ethics and manager of how to use technology
Right.
appropriately in advertising.
Right.
And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
It is on, responsibility by brands and the advertiser to do
Right.
things correctly. And then there is some sort of, I would say, a little bit of due diligence on the consumer, but I think if we're paying to put something in front of people, we as
Right.
advertisers need to be responsible
Right.
in making sure we're not trying to trick somebody
Right.
or manipulate them with different tactics to
Yeah.
buy things that they shouldn't be buying, can't necessarily afford, et cetera. List goes on.
Yeah.
So I'm into this ethics
Yeah.
position
Fascinating,
of
right?
policing advertising.
Yeah. I mean, because ultimately we are a self-regulated industry, right? So making sure that we are regulating ourselves in some form or fashion, especially, as you said, against manipulation. And it's such a fine line because as more and more technology allows for the ability to personalize, as we just discussed, or put something that is enticing in front of you, which is already happening, right? We see that with the algorithms in social media. It allows us to really hone in a potential item that you might want to buy. But how much of that is manipulation versus persuasion? I think that's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I always find the voice recognition stuff funny because
Yeah.
you always see those memes of, oh, I want a really big diamond necklace. Let me just like whisper it in
Right.
my husband's phone as I'm walking by and hope that he gets served an ad.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy, but
Yeah, we've had discussions internally in our group where we talk about, is there a way where you could lease those models to your family members, right, so that they could know you better, know you as well as the social platform does, so that they get the right gift, right, rather than.
It was like for my birthday, my mom asked what I wanted, and I had all these ads saved from Instagram that I was like, these are so cool. I want to buy them, but never got around to it. So I just sent her all these screenshots, and she's like, I'll just give you some money and you can figure it out. I'm not going to go hunting for wherever this ad was.
Yeah.
So,
awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So as we talk about, kind of the last components here, when we look at marketing firms or partners that are advertising right now, this year, 2024, we just kickstarted this year, obviously brand new year. So, what would be your main advice for them in 2024? What would you recommend?
To agencies?
Yeah, any marketer or any advertiser, really.
Advice to them would be breaking down those walls, right? Like have all hands meeting, but more of strategy together of what's going on with this TV buy. How can I integrate that more with social, right? If you have somebody like an ATD who manages multiple digital platforms for you, don't be scared of integrating together to have better strategy, right? If we don't know, like, how can we enhance their traditional media that we don't necessarily work across, and to make campaigns better, and vice versa. They might have insights of, I'm going to execute this TV placement. Is there anything y'all should think about doing this, right? Don't feel that we or any of your partners are, take a sense of, look at everything as an opportunity to grow your strategy versus, putting more walls up to think this is mine.
Right.
Right. Because you're ultimately working towards the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think for me, it would be constantly be educating yourself. There's a million certifications out there. I just gave everyone at the company a test a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Going on a company retreat, and I want to make sure, okay, what training do I need to heavy up on, and make sure that people know or don't know. Like, I need to keep everyone up to date, and that's my job, but it's also their job to make sure that they're staying up to date and, coming to clients with new things that are, coming around the corner, like be the first ones to be on the platform and suggest something new. So just constant education.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. My advice would be, don't be afraid to ask tough questions, especially with your partners or internally, right, with your group. Asking tough questions might be the right thing to do in an effort to really break through, right, and gain the insights that you're really looking for to enhance your strategy or bring in the right people, educate or train people better. That's what I would advise a lot of our clients is, don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
Yeah.
I've always said that you can ask any questions or make any comments as long as you don't make fun of me, like, personally. It's like, that's a silly that's a silly haircut, Moses. I'm like, okay, that's weird. Like, just, if people take that approach of, like, being willing to answer tough questions and not take it work stuff so personally, it just opens, so many doors.
Yeah.
So that's a great one.
Nice. We've discussed a lot of great things here today. So let's do a quick recap, for an agency partner. So we want to make sure they have a successful campaign. We produce positive ROI. So we talked about first steps. First is really understanding their KPIs, having those discussions with everyone in the room, talk about what are their most important goals that they want to have. From there, we would then obviously look at the data. What does their business say? What does the audience look like? Really go deep into the research phase and understand the customer and develop a customer segmentation as part of really influencing the KPIs. From there, or in alignment, Alyssa and her team would develop a media strategy that's aligned with a media plan that's going to obviously move the KPIs forward. And from the research phase, the outcome would be the personas, right? The personas you want to target. That leads into the audience that we're going to target in an actual campaign, or the audience segments that we would utilize. And then from there, potentially the creative, right? Creative execution. Ideally, it's working in alignment with everything else that we've got going on. And then approval, we launch. What happens next?
That's it. No, just kidding. We have to optimize. We have to track it constantly across every single platform that we're utilizing, making sure we're on track for everything. If we need to make changes and pivot, we do so. If we need to add stuff, sometimes we'll have extra budget that comes through, which is awesome. Like, okay, now we need to figure out where this goes.
Right.
Just talked about A/B testing. Am I missing anything in between that?
I would add maybe just, on our end, we would be analyzing, making sure that we're reaching the KPIs or that we're moving in the direction of the KPIs, providing that feedback to the entire team, obviously the media team, but the strategy, the everyone in the table that aligned with the KPIs, creative team obviously having their voice in there as well. And then that's a whole process of perfecting the campaign in an effort to attain the goals ultimately.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you achieve the KPIs and you produce positive ROI, and then you rinse and repeat, right? We start the whole process again, ideally making sure, do we have the right audience still? Do we need to modify that audience?
Learning from the last one and going from there.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
All right. Well, thank you guys again so much for being here with us. And also for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Predictive Pulse Podcast. I hope you found our discussion on the 6 key reasons why paid media campaigns often fall short of delivering ROI insightful and valuable. A big thank you to our special guests, Moses and Alyssa, for sharing their expertise and shedding light on the essential strategies for campaign success. If you enjoyed this episode, we would like for you to stay updated on future episodes. Be sure to subscribe to Predictive Pulse Podcast. Whether you're a data enthusiast, marketer, or business leader, our aim is to provide you with the latest media and analytics trends to help you tap into tomorrow's insights today. Don't forget to follow us for your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics, feel free to reach out. We value your feedback and are always eager to hear from our listeners. Thank you again for joining us on this data-driven journey. And until next time, stay ahead of the curve with the Predictive Pulse Podcast.